Hello and welcome to the Animation Kimmunication podcast, your source for discussion about animation, film, fandom, and more. So please join your host, I Love Kim Possible a Lot, or KP, and Lauren Kizich, the Abbey Roadie, for today's discussion. If you like what you hear, please remember to support by giving a like, a follow, as well as subscribing to the main I Love Kim Possible a Lot channel on YouTube. Spread the word and keep being a part of a great community. This episode contains some mild adult language.
Welcome, everybody, to a more zen podcast today, given the state of affairs in the world and it being on fire because of the so-called Backstreet Boys concert tour.
Yep, that's the reason.
I'm sorry, I'm taking that one from Game Grumps. I just couldn't resist it.
Backstreet Boys concert tour with a new opening act.
The reunion tour. But we're going to go with a little more of a zen approach, a little more calm approach to things today, because our topic is stress and taking care of your mental state and mental illness awareness, and basically self-care is best care today.
Go to therapy.
Go to therapy, the podcast. But yeah, we're going to try and keep it a little more off the cuff today. Kind of more like an open forum, I guess, for us to discuss. But yeah, we do have a very special guest to join us for this very momentous discussion. And that is my little sister from another Mr. Cosmic Keyframe.
Hi!
And yeah, why don't you introduce yourself?
Oh.
To the people who may not know.
Greetings from the fourth wall and beyond. I am Cosmic Keyframe. I am an artist, animator, person on the internet. I do work for many YouTube channels, mainly DA Games, doing art assets, merch design, and animation stuff for them. And besides that, selling my own artwork. I'm a self-made lady, and I talk at conventions sometimes about the craft of content creation, and I usually try to bring the point forward of self-improvement and, just liking yourself and being willing to suck a bit as you start, and, stuff that revolves around that mental health stuff and not all the gobbledygook of you have to reach these certain technical standards.
It's why you suck and why that's okay.
Yeah!
Yeah, before we start, why don't you guys talk about, knowing each other forever? Because, I don't know if people are aware, but I basically stole Lauren from Chrissy at BronyCon, and then I'm like, she's my co-host now, so...
Yeah, she's your co-host, but she's my sister. No, me and Lauren have known each other for 12 years now.
Yeah, since 2008.
Yeah, we met in a DeviantArt chat room, the one step above an AOL Messenger board.
back when they had those chat rooms on DeviantArt, by
where
the
you
way.
can
I
make
don't think they have
where you
anymore.
can make topics, and this was around the time where Lolzor and stuff was still popular, and
What's
so
the Lolzor?
It's a mystery as old as time, my friend. But no, we met through that. We did art trades and art requests, and we just, of our friend group, we probably are the closest that any of us have stayed with each other. And, we talked through Messenger and DeviantArt notes and all that stuff. And yeah, then, I flew over when it was about college looking at times to meet Lauren in person for the first time and check out her college that I didn't go to. And then, ever since I moved to California, me and her have been just the dynamic duo of doing stuff. And yeah, from all that, it's just history.
Yep. And it's crazy to look at, where we started and coming up to where we are now. How much has come through our lives and just brought us closer. Yeah, and to think it all started with us, basically we were in a Beatles fan chat room on DeviantArt, and then we started doing like Beatles crossover fan art, back and forth. So it's like the Beatles dressed as the Scooby-Doo gang, the Beatles in Phantom of the Opera, the Beatles in
Jungle Book. Though that one actually makes like a little bit of meta sense, but like and then our friendship and sisterhood is really culminated as similar success stories with different paths, because you went the whole higher education path and I didn't, and so it's interesting, but Lauren's the closest person I have in my whole darn life, and I couldn't have anyone better. I met Rachel on the internet, and then we shared a table at a con selling stuff, and she kept yelling at people to buy things, and then I yelled at people to buy things. And then we connected from there. I mean, you can yell at people as much as you want, and eventually they're going to listen out of respect, fear, annoyance, or a combination of the three. But no, I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, I think I remember, like, back in the day, like, I think I, like, probably like 2015 or 14, I remember like giving Chrissy like, okay, you're gonna do these like dot mob faces or something. So do you remember that?
Yeah, and then, that was then my life became, well, the topic of this podcast, and I couldn't do it, and then we reconnected like a year or two later, and it was like, yeah, we good, fam. So
yeah, everyone is always afraid of disappointing me, and I'm just like, it's fine. Just like, tell me. I don't know what's happening. Someone tell me things.
Yeah, but so yeah, I guess the topic that you brought me on for to talk about, or as the Canadians say, talk about.
Well, I guess we can start with what's going through our own mental health history and like what specifically has happened to make things more complicated than they need to be. So I guess Chrissy, you can go first since you're the guest.
Oh, thank you. Quite an honor. So I am a person who is diagnosed with bipolar disorder, panic disorder, generalized anxiety, and clinical depression. Though bipolar disorder, which its previous medical name being manic depression, can include anxiety and depression. So kind of an umbrella term, I would suppose. This is the big fact people need to learn. People who have mental illnesses don't understand everything about the mental illnesses they're diagnosed with. We're learning just as fast as you. But yeah, I've been diagnosed with bipolar disorder since the end of 2018. So I've been medicated for that, and anxiety disorder and panic disorder, and I've been diagnosed with PTSD since 2016. Because I simply couldn't go to a doctor after 2015, because I don't want to get too into it, but I went through a lot of toxic stuff in my past, in my old home life, and that really made a cut into me. And through the kindness of others, I was able to get out of that, and and all that. But it's still stuff that I deal with to this day, because the big realization is you could take yourself out of the toxic place, but the toxicity doesn't leave you. And I learned that firsthand, because I'm still dealing with the stuff. Arguably, now in this new decade, I'm in the biggest state of healing that I think I've gone through over the past 5 years, because now I'm in finally a place where there are certain things cut from my life that I now am in a completely safe place to process, and my body and mind recognize that, and they're like, okay, time to feel it all at once. Let's unpack 13 years of bullshit. I don't know if you can curse on this cast.
Yeah,
so.
I was just gonna be like, we curse for specific episodes, and for this one, I'm just like, we gotta go. We gotta be like,
Yeah!
everything.
Yeah!
The
Okay.
police.
Bullshit!
Like,
really? Bullshit! So, let's unpack all that bullshit.
Yeah!
So
We'll throw a Fluttershy yay over it.
Yeah! No, use that one. Use editor. Listen to me, editor. Use yeah for any curse. That's specific. If you don't, I'll find you. I'm gonna listen. But,
I was gonna be like,
basically, yeah.
like half the team aren't bronies anymore, so they might be like, what is she talking about? What is a yay?
Well, that's why you're going to use my yay.
Okay,
But
that's fair.
no. So either way, I deal with post-traumatic stress disorder, depression, bipolar, which I am medicated for the bipolar disorder. So it is medication that stops like manic and depressive episodes. Or they balance you out, but they don't exactly. They're not antidepressants. I only recently started an antidepressant. And my life since then has been just a journey from it, learning the whole thing of, it's also nature and nurture. I discovered over time that bipolar disorder and mental illness is actually something that runs in my family. So, and there is proof that is a genetic disposition. So there's a lot of stuff there, but yeah, I've been fairly open about my mental health online to an extent, and this is kind of where I am now, is in a state of constant healing and learning. And while I don't know everything, the things that I do know, I think can help people.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And can you just define, like, for people who might not know, like, what like being manic is like, and what like being depressed is like compared just to being sad?
Oh yeah, sure. People, when they hear mania and depression, they think of very, very binary emotions of happy and sad. Mm-hmm. When that is completely not the case. They are very complex feelings. Depression is the easier one to define, in that that's the one that I think more people experience compared to mania. And depression can be a multitude of things, but the most forefront thing is not sadness, but apathy. Depression, a lot of the times, feels like the lack of emotion more than the emotion itself. And you can feel sad and upset when you're depressed. I mean, eventually your body and your mind has to cycle through a feeling. But the main feeling of depression is, well, the lack of feeling. You don't feel the want and desire for people or things or hobbies or careers or passions. It's like snuffing out a flame. And usually the sadness and an upset feeling you get when you're depressed is because the only desire you have is to try to feel the passion that you felt before. Mm-hmm. But depression is like putting a wall on top of that, and it's a wall that you can't really climb most of the time, or a pit that you're in. Mania is harder to define because, the factual thing about it is bipolar disorder is grossly under-researched when it comes to mental illness, so there's not a lot of research behind it, and that goes into mania because more people often than not, fact check me if I'm wrong, audience, but most people experience mania and hypomania as a adjacent thing to bipolar disorder rather than just mania by itself as its own mental problem. Mm-hmm. And mania to most people feels like most people would think of it as a sense of euphoria, or it's the happy episodes. It's the good part of bipolar disorder. Big quotation marks. When honestly, I would say the manic episodes are the worst part of it, because mania, while you get that feeling of euphoria, you are basically like overclocking a computer or overloading something with information. You basically feel the equivalent of that scene in Space Odyssey where the guy is staring at those like blinding things of color and it just keeps going faster and faster. That's how it feels, because you get a rise in emotion that you didn't have before. And sometimes it can be happy, but it's also massively impulsive. You feel extra anxious. You can become paranoid. With the impulsiveness, you can do things like impulsively buy things or impulsively make promises you can't keep, impulsively do hedonistic actions like drink, or for people who have a more active social life than I do, have like random trysts with other people and all that. And it's scary because you don't feel in control of yourself, and not in the crazy person sense, more in the sense of you are either completely lacking feeling or you have all the feelings, and it's so hard to get to that plateau of balanced feelings where you're feeling enough of something. That's the hard part about bipolar disorder. And personally, I prefer to call it manic depression because I feel like that describes it better. And you know, the hard thing, to just go on one little last tangent, the hard thing with having diagnosed mental illness is that it is an illness, and a lot of people, they don't want to accept things they can't see, so they don't view mental illness with the same reverence that you would give like a visible illness like a flu or a broken leg or something like that. I mean, injury, I guess that's a better way to put that. But, you know, the medical research behind it is everything that is like physical about a mental illness is stuff we can't see through our epidermis, because, you know, you see pictures of it all the time, of brain scans of someone with depression or PTSD or bipolar disorder, and how that's different from the brain scan of a neurotypical person. And it's hard because you know certain facts about it, like people with bipolar disorder literally have, from my research, less gray matter in their brains because, you know, the serotonin and the different endorphins that our brain releases go through essentially tunnels in our brains. That's like the wrinkly bits, you know? And when you have, you know, a mental illness, those tunnels are wider and it's harder for those synapses to go through. And that's the hard thing to explain to people, that it's not that we feel sad all the time. It's not that we feel anxious all the time. There are imbalances and certain things that are not getting to certain parts of the brain that, you know, we don't have the luxury to have, that a lot of neurotypical people that don't have these disorders and illnesses get to have every day. Their brain works good. It works correctly. and it's that's one of the biggest struggles to try to explain and cope with these illnesses, because they seem so invisible to everyone around you that isn't experiencing it, to the point where you feel like, is it invisible? Is it all in my head? And not in my head in a scientific sense, in my head as, is it my fault I'm feeling this way? And I do feel like maybe that's why a lot of people with mental illness get into creative fields, because it's our way to try to cope with a corporeal thing or a visual thing, whether it is to directly express it and talk about the struggle in a visual medium, or to get that energy out in a constructive way. But I guess that's my piece.
Thanks for coming to group therapy. So, Lauren, tell me, how are you up?
I come from the spectrum of more or less just having to. I come from the area of just, I under a lot of stress usually, so I don't come from the spectrum of where I have any. I don't have depression, or at least not as far as I know. But I do. I do have anxiety, and I think it's just something that as I've gotten older, it's just a matter of trying to balance everything else that is chaotic in my life, and so it's just been, when it's a lot of things that pile up on a day-to-day basis, and it's just trying to juggle that, and especially during the most chaotic year I think any of us have seen, at least any of us our age have seen. It's it's a lot. But what I have done in the past few years is to try and find means of, not only trying to find ways to cope with stress and anxiety, it's more ways to kind of find answers for things within. And I think that's it's gonna sound like I know it's kind of gonna sound flower childy, but
it's just hippy dippy bull hunks.
but I did get into meditation a few years ago, and I think what the nice thing about it is that, and why I encourage people to meditate, is you don't have to be religious to meditate. You don't have to be religious to do yoga. You don't have to be religious to just literally just try and find your center. It's to find your center is to find that little bit of peace within yourself, and to kind of restore your balance. When you're feeling stressed, you just gotta, step back. You don't even have to sit there and sit there lotus style or anything. You kind of just pull back. Maybe step outside if you're inside, take a deep breath, take a few moments for yourself, and just try to clear your head. Try to just, wherever you're frustrated with or whatever is freaking you out, just kind of step away and, breathe in and breathe out. And you can just it does a world of difference, honestly. If you're coming from the area of where you get stressed out really easily, and this is coming from somebody who's actually usually pretty chill. As a person, I'm pretty chill, but then I get manic. So I just if something if something goes wrong, I immediately start freaking. So especially if I'm this is this was my responsibility. I was supposed to do this, and I did this wrong, and now everything else is going wrong, and it's all because I did this thing wrong, and it's that kind of thing when everything kind of snowballs.
Mm-hmm.
So it's all a matter of trying to stop yourself mentally from going into that crazy spiral, and meditation, and even even went to a meditative retreat for a day with basically my soul sister. So I have my little sister and I have my soul sister, and we both went to a meditative retreat for a day for her birthday, and it was last year, and it's because I knew she needed it. But I ended up getting a lot out of it too. And it was just kind of it was really nice to feel there were other people who were just like you, trying to find that peace in the middle of chaos, and trying to find answers for things within. And sometimes it's there's this crazy thing. It's going to sound a little I guess metaphysical to talk about it, but it is finding a lot of stuff that is the stress in your life is because of what we project onto things, and what ends up being more stressful to us is because we project more of that stress onto the thing. So it's a lot of there's quite a few things where it's perception and how you perceive things, and the more you think you're powerless in something, the more it's going to make you feel powerless. It's the more stressed out you think you're going to be, or the more stressed out you think something's going to make you, the more stressed out you will be. It's kind of just it's cause and effect.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's so with meditating, it's even then just taking a few minutes to just pull back, close your eyes, breathe, and then just go, okay, let's reset. We'll go back into this fresh. Just take a few minutes for yourself. That's all you need.
Mhm.
And I feel like it's something where, especially nowadays, when everybody's rushing around to do stuff, even in quarantine, when people are working or working overtime to try and like make ends meet and stuff like that. And there's points where, we all kind of like lose our heads a little bit, uh, especially, when we just get caught up in what's happening outside of our houses, what's outside the country, and what's happening, even in our neighborhoods. It's just, it's a lot to take. And so sometimes you just have to step away from it mentally and sometimes maybe even physically. Sometimes, again, like you step outside, step somewhere where you don't feel like you're, I guess, clamored over by all of the stresses and the sources of stress, and just take some time for yourself and try to rebalance yourself. Think of some things that will, that do make you feel peaceful. Like some people, I know it sounds like generic or sometimes something like you've heard it a million times before, but sometimes, visualizing, maybe visualizing a place or a thing that keeps you calm. Maybe it's a smell. You can visualize actually a smell because your sensory, if I remember, it's like your taste and your smell are some of your strongest memory sensors. So it's so when if you there's something that you like to taste or to smell and it kind of calms you, you can do that. If you have the source of that smell or that taste, that doesn't hurt either. If it's like
visualize all the New York pizza, the entire pizzeria on my tongue.
A lot of pizza.
So it's like and everybody has a different thing that makes them, happy, or it brings them some sense of calm or stability. And that's more or less where I come from. I hope that didn't sound like too rambly or anything, but
this is gonna be probably the rambliest podcast, this is probably gonna be the rambliest episode. Like,
and so it is a balancing of your personal energies. It is kind of retraining yourself how to think and how to perceive things. And sometimes that means kind of like more or less breaking down who you once were, not from like the sense of I'm going to be a completely different person now, and change who I am. It's more just how you see things and sometimes in how you think about things, and basically your vibrations will change the more you try to change that. It's like the more gloom and doom you look at when you see what you see in the world, and that makes you think gloom and doom. And that's for people who are not so much not for people with depression or anything. It's not saying, oh, you're constantly thinking this. No. It's if you are literally going to make, a mountain out of a molehill, and you're only going to look at the pessimistic stuff, that's what you're going to get back from the world. And that's when you have to retrain yourself. Okay, this is just a speed bump. This isn't the end of the world. I say this now. But it's like, then you just go, you know what? It's okay. This was just a little hiccup. It's fine. We'll get past this. The day resets tomorrow. We'll go to bed and we'll have a fresh day tomorrow, or we'll have a few minutes reset. We'll keep moving from here. And the more you retrain yourself to perceive things that way, to look more for that positivity, and it's not so much shutting out the negativity, it's retraining yourself to look at that negativity in a different way. That does help a lot. It's trying to see how the universe is working for you, not against you. If you feel like the universe is working against you, it's pushing you to do better, for yourself, for other people, for other people to do better for you too. It's like it does have to do with the way you think and perceive things. It affects your vibrations, and that affects everybody else around you. So because as you can see in this day, there's a whole lot of people moving with the same vibration. There's one big move. It's like a one big upheaval that's going on right now, and it's because of so many people resonating with that vibration. So and I could go on and on about that but I'm no expert in the vibrational stuff, and I'm not in the metaphysics and all that stuff. I don't think anybody really knows the entirety of that because that's a whole mystery world of its own. But
you need many
based
third
off of
eyes to open up that one. You need like a 4-5, a fifth
the balancing,
eye.
cleansing the chakras, recharging yourself by a salt lamp, which I'm totally not doing right now.
Yeah, sure, Lau. I believe you as far as I can throw you, and you're very small and dense. Like, be like throwing a medicine ball, but
to coming out of that perspective on my side, I mean, everybody has their own methods. There's no right way to meditate. There's no right way to do anything that comes to like finding your peace. As long as it's like, as long as it's a relatively peaceful means, then you're okay. Like, for some people, it's going and listening to live music. That's actually like, if you're going to, let's say you go to a coffee shop and there's an acoustic, somebody playing an acoustic set, and that puts you in a good mood, is to just hear and relax to some guitar, acoustic guitar. That's a good thing to do. And it pulls you out of whatever place. If you find peace going into a coffee shop and listening to that, then that's fine. Whatever helps you recharge. If you like going to a park, or you go out into sometimes if there's a hiking trail, you want to walk that hiking trail, get some air, and that's another thing. Don't be afraid to go out into nature. If you got access to it, just even if it's just walking outside your door, and there is a little patch of grass and a tree to sit under, maybe. Just like find something to kind of like help ground yourself back into some form of nature. Because
Lauren, what if the dogs did a deuce there? There's only so many patches of grass and many dogs.
First of all, there should be a sign to clean up said poop. Neighbors should look out for one another.
This was the cardinal sin of you getting me on this show.
I mean, I should have expected it. I mean, like I did, but then again.
You did, but how much?
It's like they're an old married couple.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, 12 years is a long time. We have quite a history.
What's it? I think now it's silver, the silver anniversary. but no, I totally get what you're saying. Sometimes a change of scenery does help your mental state, because we tend to really coop ourselves into the prison that is our own mind. As pretentious as that definitely sounds, it's kind of true.
Hey, there is a kernel of truth. So, I mean, come on. It's just like, to your point, we kind of make a prison for ourselves sometimes, and that does not, that only adds fuel to the fire sometimes if we're going through so much more than even just like a temporary feeling. Yeah, that's another thing. Don't think of a permanent solution to a temporary problem. So that's like, just like as long as you're alive, every problem is temporary. So do the best you can to try and like move forward day to day. I know it sometimes can be really hard to get through those days when they're really bad, but just don't be afraid to get through them, and look to your friends. If you got friends, you got family that you trust, you got anybody that you can count as your support. You can confide in them. If you have a really good solid network and you feel like you're comfortable with sharing what you're feeling with them, and they're comfortable with it too, and it's just like, as long as you have that too, you can confide in other people as well. You're not alone. Never think you're alone in your struggle, because there are people who want to help you and are open to letting you confide in them, and they want to be there for you. So don't be afraid to reach out, especially if you have some really close friends, and you know that they can help you.
Okay.
Anyway, sorry.
Like, I don't know. I wasn't sure if she was done or not. I don't want to interrupt, but so backtrack. So if you don't know what meditation is, it's basically what Lauren described to like clear your mind. And if none of that made any sense to you, I would recommend there's plenty of free guided meditations on YouTube for beginners.
Mm-hmm.
So it's basically, clear your mind and, simplify things and stuff. Also Headspace, which is a paid app, but it's free for the first couple of sessions, and it will walk you through like how to meditate. So if you want to just get Headspace for like the first couple of free ones, and then you learn how to meditate, and then you're just like, oh, I get it, let me go on YouTube like a poor person, then you can do that too. So, there's plenty of like things to walk you through meditation, but I meditate sometimes when I feel like it. But okay, so backtrack. So I'm also pretty f***ed up. I've talked about this a lot on different channels, but let's see, what do I have? A lot. So I have my family has a history on both sides of mental illness. I have probably a depressive disorder, probably some sort of like a high level of anxiety, but the biggest thing that rules my life is my my PTSD, which is not fun to deal with. And we won't go too much into that because I feel like I've talked a lot about it. But thanks the internet. But yeah, let's see what else. I guess I can talk about mental health institutions and stuff like that, because those are, I guess that's like the worst possible situation, and then we can get to the lighter stuff, like go do a doodle and you'll feel better, maybe, hopefully.
Maybe kinda.
Maybe kinda.
Sorta maybe.
Draw a line.
Not really. But yeah, I guess, the floor is yours.
The metaphorical floor.
Yeah,
I can't feel the floor, but it's there, it's under me. But let's see. So usually when you are losing function as far as just basic motor functions, as far as if you can't do your basic tasks, you can't go to work, you can't get out of bed for prolonged periods of time, maybe you should go to the hospital. And so or especially if you're suicidal, go take care of yourself, yo. And that's like, yeah, worst case. There's three different types. There's two main types. There's partial hospitalization. Words are hard. Where you're there like part time of the day, where you drive yourself if you're able to, and you have group therapy a lot, and you meet with the doctors at the institution place. And you get your drugs set up. And I've talked about this before, but the trickiest thing about seeing psychiatrists, which is like the mental health doctor and where you get diagnosed and stuff, is
the ones that can give you medicine.
The ones that drug you up, the usual. If there's a problem, I lost my train of thought. Mental health is hard because we still don't really have a good understanding of how the brain works in general. It's very complex. And maybe in 1,000 years we'll get there, but we're not there now. We're just like the 1600s version of just like, how does brain work? Like, why is it gray? Let me steal Einstein's brain and put it in a jar and like see what happens. They actually did that.
Okay.
Now you know.
Neat.
Now you know.
Neat.
I know a lot of random death facts too, because that was a thing that I was researching when I had PTSD. Because like, I don't know. Let me tell you about your slowly decaying body. But anyway, so the thing about psychiatry and mental medications is not everything works for everything. Essentially, like you might react differently to a medication than something else. So a lot of it is trial and error. In the first like maybe 6 months or so, you start to see the psychiatrist. So essentially, he'll be like, I think you should try this. Come back in 3 months and let's see if it's working. And then you do that and you see if it's working or not. And the other thing about depressed or antidepressants in general is they take a while to work. They take what, like 3 weeks or something to work before you start noticing?
They take 3 to 4 weeks to fully like set in to see effects, and that adjustment period, like around week 2, the adjustment period goes into full swing of just hell. I know for myself, because before I was on the bipolar depression depression medication I take now, which is Licetamol, I can never pronounce it. I was on one called Depakote. That was the first one I ever took, and it was the worst. It turned my manic episodes, which were more euphoric, into anger episodes, and I don't process anger well, and so it made me really irritable and angry, which, by the way, was not fun when there was a friend's wedding that same week that I was like in adjustment period time, because this was end of 2018. So it was just like that was my first experience of, this is supposed to help me. Why not?
Why can't we have nice things?
But yeah, I get what you mean.
Yeah, so, don't feel disheartened if you're just like, if nothing works, or even worse, things aren't working correctly, because you are not alone, essentially. So you just go back to the doctor and be like, yo, hey, so that didn't work. Let's try something else. So the good thing about being in the psychiatry facility in general is, especially if you're inpatient, is that you're seeing a doctor daily, and they make you take your medication. So if there's a problem, there's a short-term problem or a long-term problem, depending on how long you're there. I think the average is like 2 to 3 weeks if you're inpatient. Then they can spot it, and then you can probably get on the right medication faster that works for your brain chemistry stuff, because you have to see them every day until you're not doing stuff anymore, or if you're doing better, essentially. So yeah, that's, I guess, worst case option if you feel like you're gonna hurt yourself or hurt someone else, is you can just like, and the other thing I recommend is, if you feel like you might get that bad, then, or if you want to have it in the back of your mind, research mental facilities near you so you can find the best one, the one you feel most comfortable with. Usually the therapists in your area will probably know which one is best. I don't know why. I guess they just talk to each other. So there's kind of like a big scale of like, like the 1800s, maybe it's not that bad, but like 1800s medical institutes where they're just like, okay, we'll just lock them up. They got the woman's manic thing. They got the I don't know, whatever. Versus like, go pet a horse. We have a pool. Go swim in the pool, like more drug rehab kind of things. And obviously you have to it depends on what your insurance will cover if you have insurance, but yeah, so
there's a difference between like more clinically based institutions where they put more of a focus on the more medical side of things, and then there's the more alternative method or homeopathic clinics which focus more on the more psychiatric, psychological, or therapeutic. I guess that's the better way to put it. That, the difference between a therapist and a psychologist is that one is more based around the sciences and one is more based around kind of the emotion, sociological, psychological aspects that go outside of the realm of medicine, because we are weird humans, and while everything is kind of based off chemical reactions, how those chemical reactions affect each and every individual person is different. And that's the whole kitchen caboodle when it comes to mental health and research and medicine, which is why sometimes it takes a person like 4 different trials to find that one medication that works, is because the human body and the human mind are such complex supercomputers, but yet glitch out so damn much. I mean, like, and it's really hard. One of the non-depressive things that I have that I didn't talk about in the beginning is that because I don't exactly put it in the same lane as my bipolar and my PTSD, but it does overlap a lot of times, is I have body dysmorphia, which is I'm hypercritical about how my body looks. When I look in the mirror, I don't see what other people see. I see myself back when I was like around 200 pounds. I used to have an eating disorder. I had a binge eating disorder back before I moved to California, and the first couple of years I lived in California, and that was my self-harm, that was my punishing myself, was eating until I got sick, and that body dysmorphia goes into when I need to get medications, because there are so many medications I'm afraid to take, since a lot of antidepressants have weight gain as a side effect, and some mental health doctors don't listen when you say, hey, if this with my weight and makes me gain weight, this is going to make me more depressed, because this is going, and it's hard. Luckily, I have found ones, and by routines and diet and stuff, I don't gain weight much anymore, if any. My body chemistry has just completely changed in that sense, from gains. By the way, working out does help. What's the line from Legally Blonde? Working out releases endorphins.
Exercise releases endorphins. Endorphins make you happy. Happy people just don't shoot their husbands.
Exactly. But kernel of truth in the popcorn of pretentiousness. But yeah, so it's hard because it's so under-researched, whether by the sheer complexity that is the human brain and neurological science, or the apathy towards the concept of the importance of mental health. Because I feel like we're in the generation now that actually, like the millennial to Gen Z generation, are really the generation that has put a stock into mental health and not just denoting it as, oh, you're just sad, you're just sensitive, you're just crazy. Because we notice a lot with our parents' generation and our grandparents' generation that taking a deeper look is, if you were where we are right now, you'd probably be diagnosed with something that would explain so much about you. And that's the shame of it all.
There's also the matter of like, sorry to cut in. It's relevant to the point, but it's also kind of just like I guess you could say it's kind of like generational trauma that gets passed down too. So it's like, even if it goes back way, way, way back to many generations, that's why it's like there's this almost like this passing down of that kind of energy and that kind of vibration down from generation to generation, and that the kind of karma that gets carried down from that too. It ends up kind of affecting us as it continues down the line, and it's almost like trying to put a stop to generational karma, good or bad. It's like karma gets passed down. So it's like, and that's another thing. Karma is often a term used to say karma is going to get you, kind of thing. Like implying that it's going to get you when you're bad and stuff. But karma is a general term. It gets thrown around as like something like, oh, if you're bad, karma's going to get you. But karma is just a general term for good or bad things. It's just what you put out is what you get back. Really, it's if you do good stuff will come to you. If you do bad stuff, well, bad stuff will come to you. So it's just to clarify that. But yeah, it's a generational thing too sometimes, where that energy gets passed through.
Yeah, and I think the thing with the generational gap in understanding of mental health and stuff is that, and it has seeped into the millennial and Gen Z generation. Not saying those darn millennials and their avocado toast and depression. No, it's the thing of, I think, because of the lack, and going into the whole creative field, whether it be animation or artwork or anything of the sort, music and such, because of our lack of understanding of the nuances that come with depression and mania or schizophrenia, or any of the mental ink blot rainbow that is mental illness, is we have equated a troubled, tortured mind with creativity and have grossly romanticized it. I feel like anyone that has been in the Tumblr generation has seen this romanticizing of being an artist with depression, or taking out this anger in this tortured piece by this tortured artist, and so on and so forth. And that's very prevalent with music and such. And not to take away the pain that the person has been through, because most times than not, it's not the artists themselves that are romanticizing their pain, it's the fandom that surrounds them. I feel like there was actually, when I was getting ready for this podcast, I was thinking about an episode of Powerpuff Girls that actually I think is one of the most interesting ways to handle emotion to creativity. And I think it was a later season episode. It was like Bubbles was making like chalk drawings, and then Buttercup like ruined them. And so Bubbles ran away, and then him gave her like this magic box of chalk, and her drawings would come to life. But him just kept pushing her anger and stuff to make these angry drawings, and to get out her anger through drawing, but by making these monstrous creatures. And
let the hate flow through you.
Exactly. And then the resolution was that she still let out her anger, she still drew, but she created, nicer things, like she let it out in a constructive way. And this is not to say that you can't make vent art or things of the ilk. It's okay to not be okay. It's okay to acknowledge, hey, I don't feel good right now, and I need to visualize what this feeling feels like. That's perfectly fine. I think that is a very healthy way to go about it, to not suppress the bad feelings, but to acknowledge them, that they are there, because to acknowledge that they are there is that first step in not letting that control you and being able to move past it. Even if there's certain parts of it that you'll never truly move past, there's the thing that you can go on despite it. And I think when we get into a creative field, which a lot of people in the industry or independent have gone through trauma, have gone through their own life experiences that have left a toll on them mentally or emotionally, whether that be something clinical, whether that be workplace related, whether it be something family related like postpartum disorder, or being a bit topical stuff that they were inflicted upon because of societal reasons that were out of their control, whether by their financial status or their identity, or by the color of their skin and the kind of caste system that they are put into because of these choices that they really couldn't make. And those tolls can get represented in the stories that they tell or visualize, and I think that is a beautiful thing, without romanticizing it, being like, oh, this is the only reason that I am good. This is the only reason I am talented. No. These things are shitty things that happen to me, and I want to educate. I want to communicate how that feels. And I do think that is why we're in such an amazing generation of animation. To go full circle on this animation podcast.
I was just like, oh god, yeah, we did it.
Yeah. Play us off, Paul. No, no. Like, we're in an amazing generation of animation where we are able to tell stories with the transparency that we simply couldn't in previous eras of TV and film. Not to, at least when it comes to the medium of animation. Of course, people have portrayed mental health in a lot of live action stuff, because they simply have the freedom to, because of the stigma around animation. But I mean, I personally think there is an episode, the entire arc of the character of Steven and Steven Universe Future hit me so damn hard.
Yeah.
I mean, this is basically echoing a lot of the internet. Especially the Growing Pains episode, where they actually had a character who is a doctor in canon talk about childhood trauma and the fact that that the time where you experience the actual pain of that trauma the most is usually when you're in a safe environment and not when you're going through the trauma itself, which, obviously not everyone experiences things the same way, but in my personal experience, that is so true. Because when you're in that experience in the moment, you are in survival mode. Your feelings do not matter. Because you want to get by. You want to get through it, or you have a responsibility towards someone, and you're just trying to fix things. You feel this responsibility to fix and be a pillar of stability. And when you're finally out of that traumatic situation, where you're in the safe place where you're not expected to be the stable one, that's when you feel it at full force. And if I grew up, if I wasn't an adult, if I was like my teenage self who was going through this stuff, and Steven Universe Future somehow came out during that time, I feel like that would have helped me a lot, because we are all consumers and we learn from media. We are a media ran generation. As much as people hate it babysit your kids in front of the TV, look, that's where we are. So we might as well put good messages like that onto our media. And if I could have grown up with that message and to normalize the feeling that I felt, I feel like the kids these days are very lucky to be able to hear that and to have characters that they are connecting to that are experiencing that. And I am so grateful that we have these cartoon creators and in turn these networks that are allowing the envelope to get pushed, whether it be through, going through depression or unlikely family dynamics or divorce. Infinity Train Book 1 actually did a great job portraying divorce and how that affects a child. There's a lot of that in animation these days, of people who have obviously been through mental torture and illness, telling their stories and educating. And I really have a positive hope that because of this, the generation that will come up from us will be more open to this kind of invisible world, to ask questions and to not hide how they feel. Because it's scary to admit to an adult or to like your counselors or all these things, I don't feel right. Is it my fault? And it's not your fault. It's so not your fault. That sometimes we are just given a bad genetic. We go through shit that we didn't ask for. And our brains can't handle it like some people can, and that's okay. And I hope that with this new generation going in, being more in tune with their emotions and normalizing the conversation of mental health, I feel like we're going to be in a better place than when we started out.
Yeah, I agree.
That was nice.
Yeah, it's like
I think about this a lot.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it shows why actually, even at this time, more cartoons have been streamed on streaming services nowadays. It's like art seems to speak more to people, especially in times of great stress and great anxiety. And for people who, especially who are dealing with mental illnesses in the middle of all of this, that it's people see and recognize animation more for the messages it has, and for that kind of the comfort and reassurance that sometimes they can provide. And that's why art is important, people. So art is a universal expression. So it's like, and that's why it's good, and that's why art is also therapeutic. I mean, that's why when you see art being utilized in schools, there are some kids who are going through a lot of stuff in their own lives, and they see that as an outlet. If they have even a little bit of time to do a drawing in an art class, or somebody's teaching them to draw or paint, that's an outlet. Somebody teaching them to do music, that's an outlet. So it's it's kind of like an escape, and at the same time it's being able to confront the feelings that you have, the emotions you have, the problems you have, and then being able to, make something out of a bad situation, and
to help process through it.
And that, so I mean, here we are with this podcast to, like, it's an outlet for us too. It's just like, we like to be able to talk about animation, talk with other people who like animation and practically live it, and seeing how that affects people, and why they do what they do, and why they create what they create. And for, it seems, almost everyone, it's like everybody has their own reasons to do it, but it all seems to unify under, we all have a passion for it, and it's an escape. Who doesn't want to escape to something that's far from the troubles we have? And sometimes we use that outlet to confront the problems we have, but we do it in a way that everybody can understand.
Okay.
So that's what I think it's so great about animation and about art in general, that we can do that and utilize it as an important tool.
Okay, I'm gonna say a thing. Okay, the first thing I wanted to say before I go on my spiel is, or I think this was the spiel episode essentially. So I'm sorry. I hope you're well. If you're listening at this point, then you're probably spieled out. But it's okay. You can go take a break and come back for the spiel. But anyway,
Go use the bathroom.
I think one of the bigger reasons. There's many reasons why I was like, hey Lauren, let's do a podcast. Like, this seems like a good idea. But one of the main reasons is, I think, in general, and this ties back to mental health, I promise, but I think in general, like, this is a problem with people that are YouTubers, that are performers, that have to kind of put on this persona of a kind of personality that they have to, even if they're, like, for someone who's playing themselves, like, say someone like Larry David and he's playing himself in TV, there's a difference between Larry David, the guy who's over-exaggerating his tendencies for the camera, and then Larry David, just kind of the more chill person. They might be very similar, but there's a difference in performance. There's a difference in, just how they perceive things.
There's a bit of fictionalization there.
So, one of the many reasons I decided to, I was like, hey, let's do this podcast, is to kind of peel back those layers with me and just other people in the industry, is because, I get frustrated when, people have seen me in the past and they're just like, Ree, she's egotistical. Ree, she made this joke this one time. And it frustrates me because I try to be a good person. And, I'm sure, like, we all try to be good people, but, just like any comedian, there's jokes that aren't going to hit. There's jokes that people are going to get offended at. There's jokes that are going to be like, it's going to go over their head because there's some fictionalization around it. And I thought just having a more chill kind of environment to talk about things, especially things I wouldn't have time or things I wouldn't address on the main channel, and like more topical things like with what's going, just animation news in general and reacting to that, is important. And the other thing I wanted to say is, I think to Chrissy's point, I feel like nowadays there's also a bigger responsibility for creators to use their platforms, specifically showrunners, but really anyone. If they're doing original fiction, if they have a show or something, that they are portraying at least complex themes about maybe not mental health, but just like anything anything that their character is going through. Someone could take something from that and relate it to their own situation and find solace in the fact that, you know, how did this person get through it? How did well, maybe I can use that. Like, I've said it before, but like one of the reasons like I've really come to love Simba more than, you know, I have since I was a child is just I relate to him as a character who is not perfect, obviously, and had to kind of you can only run away at you can only run away or you can only run for so far. But, you know, like, is that going to make you happy, just running? You know, you're going to leave everything behind just because something happened that was hard and gross and traumatic and, like, you know, like, in some ways very much out of your control, like, even though he didn't realize it. But in my case, like, you know, well, similar, like, it was hard for me to realize things. But, yeah, so I think, like, and I think that's why The Lion King resonates with so many people in general, not just because of that, and having a flawed character come back and face responsibility, but also, you know, having the death of a father or a father figure die and kind of having to deal with that. Mufasa dies. I hope I didn't spoil The Lion King for you.
How dare you!
Oh, God. So,
I've been waiting for the right moment.
It's been 26 years. 26 years too soon.
It's been sullied. This event that happened before I was born is now sullied.
So, you know, like, and that's why, you know, that movie works really well is because it faces or takes a really realistic issue versus some sort of Disneyfication or, like, sugarcoating of something that is softer and like, oh, he was alive the whole time. He was just hiding, you know, but, like, you know that's not the case when, like, you know, Simba is just like, come on, Dad, get up, and he's not getting up, and then everyone's crying. And, you know, wouldn't have ruined the movie if he was just like, oh, sorry, I fell asleep.
Yo, fam, I just went out to get milk.
I just went out to get cigarettes, and I didn't come back.
You know,
until now.
Until now.
But yeah, I've been thinking about this a lot in the last couple of days, but like part of my also like my core reason as just a person is just kind of defending, like, if something I love like passionately, and there's only a couple things I love passionately in this, like, you know, movies and stuff like that, if I introduce someone to that and it becomes like much more well celebrated because I'm talking about it and I have a platform for it, and like that's my whole like reason for living essentially. So, you know, like I've been mentioning Treasure Planet a lot, and now I'm playing the PlayStation game because I only have a PlayStation, and I was just like, well, when I'm at, like, I can only write scripts for so often. I've been unemployed essentially because of all this stuff, and I'm just waiting for things to fix. And like part of my MO is like Atlantis just got a live action movie, which will hopefully help the reintroduce people who haven't been to Atlantis as a concept. And I think it's a cool movie, and I think it probably just should have been live action from the get-go anyway, really. Like, I love the animation, but like plot-wise I think it will work really well as a live action movie.
Milo will not look any more handsome than he does animated.
I know people are holding out for like Tom Holland to play Milo, and I'm just like,
No,
everybody holds out for Tom Holland for everything. It's like, I'm like, I love him too, but guys, you gotta stop casting Marvel actors in literally everything. Just please, there's other people.
Look, we just need to get a time machine, go back in time, and just get Michael J. Fox.
Kidnap him off the set of Back to the Future. Just be like, we'll explain when we get there.
and while we're at it, let's just go to back to Ferris Bueller's Day Off, send kidnap young Matthew Broderick, and then we'll have a good old time.
Yeah, baby Matthew Broderick is so cute.
And it's funny because his personality is the complete opposite of Ferris Bueller in real life. Like he is not this snarky kid that gets away with everything. He is basically Leo in The Producers. That's actually him.
He's a good boy.
Baby.
He's a good boy.
Baby man. Baby.
But
yeah.
So anyway, I think that got confirmed. I'm kind of excited for that because I want to see like just how that affects because like even like if people don't care about the old 2D animation thing, then it's still a movie to see. Like it only helps its case. And so like I'm waiting for like the day and like on my feet just waiting for the call when they're like I'm hoping that we go to Disneyland someday, and then Jim Hawkins is just walking around Tomorrowland, which he was a couple months ago in Disney World, and like I like drop everything and run to him like Lauren did to Beetlejuice that one time, and just like, let me tell you how much I love your movie. But I think the streaming, we're a little off topic, but I think the streaming services of Disney Plus and just streaming in general is giving a lot of access to a lot of things that would have gone under the radar, or things that haven't been watched in like years because they haven't been on television, like Gargoyles or Kim Possible, what's that? And as well as the industry in general moving a lot towards women who like remember these films fondly, and versus how it was dominated mostly by men historically. And I'm hoping like these films will get rediscovered and like eventually reappreciated. Like I want to do a video about how DreamWorks doesn't really know how to market itself besides like Shrek and a little bit of How to Train Your Dragon, but like especially like
DreamWorks' worst enemy is itself.
DreamWorks
is a snake eating its own
DreamWorks'
tail.
worst enemy is the DreamWorks face, or the B movie.
The meme machine.
But like I will live for the day where I'm like walking my cane, and then there's a couple of Treasure Planet things in the Disney shop when we go to Disney, and I'm like, Lauren, look at my boy. They did love my boy after all. Like we did it. We did it.
What?
So it only takes one famous celebrity, and I'm like waiting for the interview when Joseph Gordon-Levitt talks about like Treasure Planet or something, because he can do it. He can do it. He just hasn't yet.
I hope Guillermo gets to direct Atlantis. That would be the perfect director for an Atlantis movie.
I mean, it's funny because the original whole premise of Atlantis was like, okay, so it's a monster flick because of all the crazy monsters. Who's better to do monsters than Guillermo del Toro?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I mean, they based the visual style off the Hellboy comics.
Well, I mean, it was the artist based off the artist style. So I mean, that was So they basically
with
went
big
the
old
whole
hams.
Yep, they basically went the whole Hellboy aesthetic because of So that's always cool. That's why it was so cool to see at the turn of the millennium Disney going with a whole new style change, and why it seemed to carry over kind of more or less into Treasure Planet, but also a little bit over from Emperor's New Groove as well. Just seeing that more updated, like turn of the millennium art style. That's more sleek, more contemporary, and
kind of like the 2000s Xerox style in a way. Kind of like how Disney kind of changed their aesthetic. Come 101 Dalmatians and Sword in the Stone and stuff.
Yeah.
And
to tie it back in before we give you some more mental health tips, I guess, in these trying times, please have an egg in these trying times.
Take two.
Hey, it's late for me. I'm on the East Coast. Give me a break.
Oh yeah, you're in like midnight
yeah, it's
times.
the things I do for you. But anyway, you people. But yeah, I think we, like, creators, especially in these modern times, have a responsibility to educate and have inclusive themes for the viewer, just so they, like, you know, they can introduce people that might not have a good understanding about said themes. Like, this has been the biggest one that has been repetitive in the last probably 10 years, is slowly sneaking LGBT plus characters into animation in general without, like, and just having them there, essentially. So, you know, She-Ra did that a lot. I mean, and Steven Universe did, and, like, even before that, there were, like, Loud House, yeah, and then, like, there were characters in the background for some things, but, like, I get angry when, like, you know, I'm gonna trigger Chrissy a little bit, but I get angry when, like, showrunners are just like, I have this great character, and I'm like, but what's your story? So, like, all of, like, season 4 of Star versus the Force of Evil was, like, a train wreck.
Oh, no, I agree. I don't like the last season of Star at all.
Yeah, and I'm just like, what a waste. Is, like, you have these characters that are fun, funnish, like, I kind of regretted watching all of Star versus, but I don't mind it, and then I'm just like, what a waste. And you're having you're tying up the story with this, just like it's basically like, oh, there's a problem with this, someone is using this thing badly, let's just destroy all the things. Like, so in this case it's magic, so it's like someone's abusing magic, let's just destroy all the magic. And I'm just like, what? And it's like, it's and I think, like, serialization is the future as far as just general animation. I think that helps with quality, and you have to, like, if you're doing a show, if you want to do a show, then get your story arcs ready for the pitch meeting, goddammit. Like, I want pictures of Spider-Man on my desk.
That's not saying that there's not a place for cartoons to just be cartoons. I mean, like, I would say, like, some of my favorite cartoons to come out of the 2010s were stuff like Mighty Magiswords and Mau Mau Heroes of Pure Heart, which are very purely episodic cartoons having fun being an episodic cartoon. There is a place for it. I think we're just in an era of serialized animation because one, streaming services has just made it a more digestible method, and we're just in an era where, because, like, Steven and Gravity Falls and stuff kind of set the foot forward for serialized animation. The industry itself is like, oh, how can we profiteer off that? And that's why we have the saturation of it that we have now. Not to say that these things are not of quality just because they are part of a saturated market. They are. A lot of them are of quality. I think just, like how we said earlier, creativity in art and animation is a way to escape. It's escapism at the end of the day. And just as much, I think, it's kind of like how you can escape to the Harry Potter books and like just have a fun time going on this adventure with all these different arcs and stories. Kids and adults can have fun reading just a nice novella that is just its own self-contained thing. So I feel like the thing of telling a story and using, your talents, skills, and what you've gone through in a creative way doesn't have to be in the rigid template of a serialized story-based animation with explicit mentions and narrative dynamics using mental health. Sometimes you just want to escape into a world with a cat with a sword, and that's perfectly okay.
Yeah. I think to find middle ground, like, if you want to do a thing, make sure you know what you want to do with it, essentially. Like, is it going to be the episodic, standalone, like, silly show that just kind of exists in its space? Or, like, don't try to do one of the other half. Yeah! Because we can tell, Yeah.
Yeah.
She's just like,
So,
yeah. Oh, the star flashbacks. Just like,
oh god, they should have ended it at coordination, and then it could have been a perfectly fine ending.
yeah.
Well,
But
why
we
Alex Hirsch had the right idea with Gravity
We had
Falls,
to ship it.
because he knew
We had to
exactly
make
what he
ships
wanted.
Go longer, I guess.
You know, it's like Gravity Falls started and ended how Alex wanted it, and he's like, I don't care what anybody says. This is what I wanted. I'm keeping it as that. We're ending it here. That's all I wanted to say. Okay, on to the next project, because I have more stories to tell.
Right.
So, I mean,
onto hiding a statue into like a park in Washington.
I do not know what you're referencing
The whole
to, but I am
cipher hunt.
concerned.
No, the Cipher Hunt, where he hit a Bill Cipher statue, and there was this scavenger hunt that went all across the globe to find this Bill Cipher statue, and it's like it's a very fascinating story to look up. But now that statue's in some place called like Mission Hill or Mystery Hill that's up in Northern California. But yeah,
Sounds like he has a lot of time on his
mental
hands.
health.
Anyway.
Well, I mean, yeah.
But yeah, mental health. So I think, let's see how it has affected me as an artist, and anyone else can feel free to jump in. So I don't know. I guess it just took me a while. Like, if anything, it kind of like made me more nihilistic and pessimistic. And the other thing, which maybe will be another episode, is it like all the therapy made me start to realize behaviors and thinking patterns of toxicity and toxic people. And because of that, I've been much stricter as far as who is allowed to be in my life on a personal level, and who just has more shit to basically work through that I just have to save my mental energy for, essentially. And that's like, again, that's a whole big thing, because we've like, in general, a lot of the people in the animation industry and the film industry in general are kind of big kids that sometimes they never grew up, and sometimes they're hitting on way younger women, for instance, or and I'm just like, or all the Me Too stuff, which is not fun. So I think recognizing those thinking or those behavioral patterns is very important if you're going to work in a creative field. But I think that's the biggest takeaway that I've had, the biggest positive takeaway that I've had to deal with or learned, is just kind of how, I wouldn't say evil, but how really gross people justify their actions with taking the least amount of accountability as humanly possible. And just, it's gross. It's gross how, like pulling the sheep behind or pulling the, I don't know, whatever the metaphor is of like you're
pulling the
curtain back, and really seeing how these people, I call them people with power, but they're really YouTubers. They have an audience, but these people with power are really just like how much they need that audience for a sense of self-worth and a sense of validation. And I've I've come to the point where I'm just like, I'm very grateful that I have this audience now, and I'm grateful that I have this platform, because it gives me a lot of opportunities, it lets me know a lot of people. But at the end of the day, I'm just someone who likes animation, and I'm not any better than anyone else because I'm a YouTuber. And I think that's lost on both the audience sometimes and the YouTubers themselves. And I think my thing helped me strip away, the sense of validation that, like, that people might have with it, essentially. And like, if someone else were in jeopardy of losing like everything they've worked for, and everything that they feel like they've earned, and the respect that they feel like they've gained, and instead you have all of a sudden just people telling you how horrible of a person you are, and how I used to like you, but I trusted you, man. and now you've just become this thing that, you know, I don't recognize anymore. And, you know, it's, you know, it just makes you think, essentially. And basically, don't use anything, don't use your career, don't use, like, any of your accomplishments as a sense of validation and self-worth, because it's bad. It can only lead to bad things. It might make you feel good, but, you know, that, like, I think learning to love yourself for, you know, what kind of person you are and what you like to see in other people and your values is much more important and less harmful at the end of the day than trying to use your job or something as a sense of self-worth. And, you know, okay, there's my spiel. Did anyone else want to jump in?
Yeah, what about you, Lau?
I was gonna say, well, I guess in terms of like any tips I have for that, I'm not a big major YouTuber or anything like that, but my art has frequented many art social circles, I guess you could say.
Like, puts on shades.
You best believe that my one of my old Beatles artworks from when I was like 16 still circulates to this day as a birthday image for people who are sending Beatles birthday messages to people. And I'm like, this was addressed to my 16-year-old friend. This is weird, but okay. But because it has a 16 balloon in the background. But anyway.
But yeah, but I mean, like, how, what, you know, your struggles, or like, you know, the how that has, you know, affected your creativity or that kind of stuff, or how your creativity is used with it or in adjacent, you know?
It's more or less, I use my creativity as an escape, more or less. So it's like, you know, anytime, I mean, it's part of my job, but it's also at the same time, anytime I have time to draw for myself, I absolutely take that. Because it's just, that's the time I have that's truly my time. And it's to be able to draw what I want for myself and what I'm feeling in that moment. And that's why it's like I still stand by it. I'm not going to go on a long spiel about this, but but it's just like why art is therapeutic and why we do need it and why it's good to have it. Even if you're not good at art, sometimes it's good to even just color in something. Sometimes people, that's why there are adult coloring books nowadays. It's just that some people find it really therapeutic to color in a book, and it's like it keeps their mind off of things, off of anything stressful. It kind of helps them focus on one thing for a little bit, and then and some people do some like amazing coloring work, and they color in these like incredible mandalas, and they get all creative with the shading and the lighting and effects and in those mandalas, and that's really cool. So I mean, it's for me, it's like I use it to tell my stories, but in the end, when related to the topic, that's my means of like being able to just really be more in touch with myself and more in touch with my artistic roots. And it's like, you know, I love to draw animals, for one. I've drawn animals longer than I've drawn people. And so it's like whenever I find an opportunity to like go outside and doodle animals, or even if I go to like the zoo, or if I go to a park and I observe nature, that's like, I love to do that because it's just one of those things where I know I get inspiration from that, and then I just translate it into my art. And that is an escape for me, and it helps so much to have that time for myself. So Chrissy, you got any notes?
Well, I mean, yeah.
Go to therapy.
Yeah, well, I mean, yes, please do. No, just, I feel like that my creative outlets and me getting into the world of animation and cartoons and stuff of the ilk really did at first come from a sense of escapism. You know, I never had like a really easy life, whether it was from domestic, familial issues, or back when I was younger, before those really came to light, I was severely bullied in school, and the constant in my life was cartoons and art and drawing, and this feeling of this little world that someone made that I can go into and that I can make stuff based off in. Now I'm making my own little world. And I feel like that hasn't left me, because now I view the world as there's a lot of good and there's a lot of bad. And I've experienced a lot of bad, but I've also experienced some of the good. And if I can use the stories that I want to tell, whether they be just fun, crazy adventures, or more concentrated stories going into struggles that I've had with loss, or mental issues, or depression, or anger, and all this stuff, and I could make someone go into a world for a bit and feel less alone, or escape into something, to be part of that good that they can experience. Because we're all going to experience good and we're all going to experience bad. No one lives in an idyllic utopian land of ignorance, because then you never actually grow as a person.
Exactly.
But if I can use my creativity and my ideas and the skills that I have honed over the years to make something that becomes part of those kids or adults or teenagers good, their bubble of good, and that makes them want to make their own little bubble of good that they can share and cause those little spotlights to touch each other, or dominoes to go over, whatever metaphor you want, then I think that I have taken the experiences that I did not choose to have, the pain that was inflicted on me, and in turn the mental illnesses I gained, and make something of it that's my choice. I feel like then I've reclaimed a bit of myself. I've reclaimed a little bit of control that I did not have before, and now I'm making something that defines me and what I can do, rather than what has happened to me defining it. And to the listeners, this is the last bit of me, and that's what I will leave you off on, is life is hard. An understatement of the century. Life is hard, and you are going to go through pain that a lot of the times will not be your fault, or you will not have a hand in choosing what pain you go through. Mm-hmm. And maybe because of those pains that you go through that aren't your choices, you feel like you have to devolve into pain that you cause yourself. We're not all faultless creatures. But no, the pain you've gone through and the illnesses you have, the disorders you have, the memories you have, the trauma you have, they only define you as much as you let it define you. And that's easier said than done. What you can have define you is what you do with yourself. Because you couldn't control what happened to you or what will happen to you, maybe to an extent what is happening to you. But you can control you, and you can define you. Mm-hmm. With either the stuff you make or the person that you want to be. And I know a lot of it just sounds like empty words. But know that the person saying these words that may seem empty have gone through the same thing and has had the same doubts that you may have hearing it. Because I had the same doubts sometimes with me hearing it from other people or myself. But every little bit of time, you believe it more and more. And maybe some days you won't believe it as much, but other days you'll believe it a lot. You define you. Your trauma does not. Other people may have definitions for you, but that's not your definition. Stay creative. Stay creating. Make the bubble you want to make.
Yeah, that was very, very nice. Well said.
Let's slow clap it out. Slow clap it out for my sister because that was awesome.
Yeah, we did it.
Sweet victory. Yeah.
But I'll just leave it because I don't really want to say anything after that. I think that's much more well said than just like go to therapy. But just if
Go to therapy.
if you want more tips, I talk about it a lot in my collab with Lily about what to do if you're in situations where you might not have the outlets, if you can't afford therapy. Aromatherapy is great. Get some candles. Whatever you have to do. And I wish there was something I could say that makes it easier, but in reality, I think something that I've learned is that you respect yourself more if you survive through it, and you didn't think you could, but then you did, and then you're like, wow, like a lesser person maybe would have crumbled with this kind of stuff, all this stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and but I didn't, and I found my way through, and and the people that put me here, couldn't own up to these actions, and that says a lot about them, and that's kind of my light essentially that I kind of look through, is that I'm still, like, we're all trying to do good by talking to you, the listener, about our shit, basically, in order to help. And I try to, like, even with my videos, I try to, like, help people feel less alone with the things that they like. And it's okay to be obsessive, as long as you're, being healthy about it, essentially. You're not, and it's okay to, like, drown into fandom stuff, as long as you're not harassing anyone or something, or you're using that to create or meeting people through this, or meeting people through fandom stuff. Like, I think all of us have gained the majority of our friends through fandom. Correct me if I'm wrong. But yeah, I think that's all I wanted to say. So it gets, all I can say is really it gets better. Like, even though it doesn't feel like it will, and even though some days you just want to die, if you make it through, then it gets better. Lauren, do you want to say anything as the least up person here?
I'm really just I'm gonna keep it short and sweet. Be kind to yourself. Be kind to others. Just be considerate. Just, sometimes whether you know what you're going through or fully understand what you're going through or not, just know that not everybody has a full grasp of what they're going through either. So, I mean, we're kind of all just trying to get by day by day. So that's the truth of it, is everybody's just trying to get through every day as best as they possibly can. So be kind to yourself and be kind to others, because as the saying goes, you don't know what other people are going through. Somebody else could be going through a shit day like you are, sometimes even worse, and you just don't know. So just be kind to others as best as you can, and but especially be kind to yourself, because there's only one of you, and I know that's an overused phrase, the one of you, and there's nobody else like you, but it's true. Just take the best care of yourself as you can, because if you can't, and if you want to help others, you got to make sure you're good too. Like, make sure you're in the best headspace, if you have the best energy to help others as best as you can as well. because we all got to lean on each other
Lean on
from time to
me.
time. And we're humans, we're social creatures. And so we need support. And if you need to look to somebody else for that support, that's totally fine. Don't feel afraid to do that. But if you're taking care of yourself, again, practice meditation, take some walks, practice self-care, aromatherapy, like KP said, that's a good one. Even burn some incense if you're not allergic to the stuff.
Eat your vegetables.
Scented oils, eat well. Yes, diet is another thing. That could be a whole other podcast in and of itself. But watch what you eat, what you put into your body. If you're putting in junk, you're going to get back junk. If you're putting in the good stuff, then you're going to get back the good stuff, and you're going to feel better about it too. So yeah, exactly. Eating your vegetables and your fruits. No lie, it'll help. Also dark chocolate, because the antioxidants will do wonders. So anyway, but yeah, in the end, make sure you're taking care of yourself as best as you can. Of all the little things that you like for yourself, that you like to do, that you enjoy, take some time and enjoy those things. Take a little time to watch a funny video. Take a little time to read some of your favorite book. Take a little time.
Go cry at some dog pictures.
Yeah,
That's what I do.
yeah. Go find some dog pictures like Chrissy does.
Get your best friend to send you pictures of her dog so you can cry.
Yeah.
over 'em.
Which that is true. That is true.
That is something
It's so
I'll do all the time on social media. Is every time I'm sad, and I'll be vocal about when I'm sad, just because I think being vulnerable, helps other people feel comfortable being vulnerable. But I'll be like, I'm sad, send me pictures of your dog. I'm sad, send me pictures of Discord. Stuff like just do what you can.
I just go to Lauren on Messenger and being like, I need pictures of Phelps. I need pictures of the dog. And then she sends me her dopey-eyed little baby. And
He's so fat too.
Oh. He's a big Chumby. He's a Chumby that always smiles and doesn't blink.
He's adorable. He's my baby. But yeah, I guess to close that out, that's my 2 cents. Is take care of yourself, and once you feel well enough, you can help look after other people too, because we're all trying to lean on each other to get through each day, and especially in tumultuous times as these, that's what you gotta do. Self-care is self-care is the best care, because then that means you're also going to be taking care of other people around you when you're doing well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think we can end there. So
Yeah.
subscribe, I guess.
That's such a weird thing after all this is. Yeah. So smash that like button and
But yeah, but if you want to listen to more podcasts, this was a more serious podcast, so to speak. But it was good to have, because it's a more open forum thing too, and it was a little bit more relaxed. But if you want to hear some more of our other episodes, check out our YouTube. Check out actually any other streaming site, like I believe we're like on SoundCloud. We're on
We're on all of
a
the
bunch
things.
of different.
So
We're on all the things.
Are
So
you on
whatever your
Spoofy?
streaming platform, yeah. If we're on your streaming platform for podcasts, then we're there. And
Yeah.
we aim to air an episode every Wednesday. So we start with the streaming platforms, and then later on in the day, probably towards evening, we usually have an episode up on our YouTube channel. So you can have some nice visual fun stuffs going on while you're listening to us ramble. So, thank you.
then later in the week, you'll just find an 8-track tape mysteriously under your welcome mat, and then
But
and then yeah.
but yeah, it's but yeah. So if you want to join us for any other episodes, we have already lined up. We had some fantastic guests in the past that you can check out if you haven't checked them out already. And I wanted to take this moment to thank my little sister for joining us today. And I'm really glad we got to have like a more chill episode with you, and to have you on here for your very first time. And this will definitely not be the last, I can tell you this.
I hope so. I hope it's not like when I leave the call, KP is like, Lauren, we can't. Her energy just.
She's too serious.
She does not pass the vibe check, Lauren. Her vibes are way too chaotic.
We'll get back to more fun stuff after this, I promise.
I would love
next
to.
Next podcast, Christy shows you or tells you how to get buff. So,
I mean, just that it's like that instead of the podcast art that I'm going to get for this one, it's just the same face but on like a body.
That's
just like holding the two of you in my palm, like sup. But,
yeah, that's what
no,
we did
in
for the fan server. It's just like a really buff body, but like my horse head on it. I'll send you the picture after, but it's a work of art.
But no, in all seriousness, thank you for having me on. This was a topic I know you guys told me about me being on for this topic a while back, and I've been excited to talk about it. It's very good to have this kind of open dialogue, especially, my job is essentially to be a professional shitposter. So to actually have a long-form, uninterrupted dialogue where I can actually show the more astute side of myself, it's rare, like a rainbow, but it's beautiful. And then it goes away, and then you're like, meteorology is weird. But but no, I'm happy to be on, and I can't wait to be on for more funny guffaw topics.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, everyone subscribe, just so you can wait for me to come back. And I will come back, editor. I will come back, and I'll have more demands, editor. Tom.
We don't have a Tom. Nice try though.
Damn it. Tyler. Do we have Tyler?
No, we don't have Tyler.
No.
That will be the next episode. She's just guessing editor names.
She's still... Years later, she's still guessing.
Rebecca! No. Those are all the names I know. No one else has any other name. But anyways, this is devolving, so,
Okay.
subscribe.
Yeah, bye everyone. Get out of here.
Yeah, the show's over, guys, but thank you guys so much.
Show's canceled.
Go get a therapist, please.
Yeah, be kind to yourselves, be kind to others, and have a good night, everybody, or day, depending on what time you're listening to this. Have a good general time of day, whatever it is. Be kind to yourselves, be kind to others, and good night.
Da-da-da-da.
Thank you so much for listening to Animation Kimmunication on YouTube, Spotify, or your favorite podcast provider. We are really hoping this show makes a difference in how people view animation and media, as well as giving and providing advice for people all over the world who like or want to join the animation or media industry. If you liked what you heard, please remember to subscribe and rate those 5 stars, as well as tell your friends. Don't forget to subscribe to our main YouTube channel, I Love Kim Possible a Lot, and turn those notifications on. My name is Scribbler, and you have been listening to Animation Kimmunication.